Russia doesn't lose wars when its armies collapse. It loses them when it loses control of time. And invading Poland wouldn't be a slow escalation, a regional crisis, or a controlled gamble. It would trigger everything at once. NATO would move immediately. Airspace would tighten. Reinforcements would surge. The moment Russia crosses that line, the war stops being Russia's to manage. And that is exactly why Poland is the one country Russia can't afford to invade. From Moscow's perspective, Poland is not dangerous because of a single weapon, a single base, or even a single alliance clause. Poland is dangerous because it removes the one thing Russian strategy depends on more than anything else: delay. Russia's modern pressure model is built around buying time. Time to probe reactions, time to split political responses, time to let hesitation work in its favor. That approach has worked where ambiguity exists. It worked in Georgia. It worked in Crimea. It worked for a time in eastern Ukraine. It even worked diplomatically across parts of Europe. Poland is the opposite environment. There is no gray zone where an invasion of Poland stays unclear. No political hesitation phase to exploit. No compartment where Moscow can apply pressure in one place while managing escalation elsewhere. The moment that line is crossed, the strategic picture snaps into focus faster than Russia can react. That is the core problem. Invading Poland would not be a campaign Russia controls. It would be a chain reaction Russia triggers. And Russia has spent the last 2 years learning what happens when it loses control of a war's tempo. To understand why Poland is such a dangerous target, you have to understand how Russia prefers to fight when it believes it has options. Russian pressure campaigns rarely begin with a single dramatic strike. They begin with ambiguity, naval movements that look routine, exercises that blur into readiness, political signals designed to test reactions without forcing commitment. The goal is not immediate victory. The goal is uncertainty. Uncertainty slows decisions. Slower decisions create room. And room allows pressure to build quietly until resistance becomes politically expensive. That logic depends on one assumption: that the target hesitates. Poland does not hesitate. Unlike states on the margins of NATO decision-making, Poland operates as a frontline system. Its planning assumes proximity, not distance. Warning times measured in minutes, not days. Escalation that arrives layered and overlapping across airspace, cyber, logistics, and borders. Where Russia prefers gradual escalation, Poland is built for immediate response. Where Russia seeks ambiguity, Poland treats it as a warning sign. Where Russia hopes for fragmentation, Poland anchors itself as a connector inside NATO, rather than a peripheral actor. That is why an invasion of Poland collapses Russia's preferred timeline before the first shots even settle. This is also why comparisons to Ukraine miss the point. Ukraine in early 2022 existed in a space Russia believed it could manipulate. It was not covered by alliance guarantees. Western responses required debate. Military aid took time to scale. Escalation pathways were uncertain. Poland exists in none of those conditions. An attack on Poland does not wait for interpretation. It would likely trigger immediate NATO consultations and rapid posture shifts alongside national and allied response options that have been planned for years. The crisis would not begin with tanks crossing a border. It would begin with NATO consulting, repositioning, and tightening the operating picture. That distinction matters because Russia does not plan wars as isolated military contests. It plans them as pressure campaigns where force, signaling, and escalation management interact. Poland removes the management part entirely. The moment Poland is threatened, the decision space collapses. There is no room to shape narratives or stagger responses. The alliance does not need to decide whether it is involved. It already is. This is why Poland functions not just as a country, but as a tripwire. Tripwires are not designed to stop an attack outright. They are designed to make sure any attack immediately becomes something larger than the attacker intended. Russia understands this well. It avoids direct confrontation with forces it cannot isolate. It prefers deniable actions, indirect pressure, and limited objectives. Poland is built to deny all of that. NATO forces stationed in Poland are not symbolic. They are multinational, integrated, and tied into broader command structures. Any attack on them would immediately raise the risk of a multi-country response, making it far harder for Russia to frame the conflict as bilateral or regional. And beyond the forces already present, Poland is positioned to accelerate reinforcement faster than Russia can adapt. Logistics corridors, pre-positioned equipment, and continuous exercises mean escalation does not need to be invented in a crisis. It already exists as routine. This is what Russia fears most. Not strength, but inevitability. Poland's military buildup reflects that logic. It is not designed for prestige. It is designed to survive the opening phase of a war and deny Russia the rapid success it would need to control escalation. Russian doctrine places enormous importance on early momentum. Speed creates shock. Shock creates leverage before opponents synchronize. That approach only works against a target that is unprepared or slow to respond. Poland has structured its entire defense posture to deny that window. Instead of chasing showcase platforms, Polish planning emphasizes mass, sustainment, air defense, fires, and logistics. The goal is not a single decisive battle. It is preventing collapse in the first days, when Russia would need it most. Because if Poland holds in that opening window, the war changes character. It becomes a NATO war. And Russia does not win NATO wars. Not because NATO is perfect, but because it is built to do exactly what Russia struggles with most: sustained coordination over time. This is only the opening layer of the problem. Because once the war cannot be kept local, everything tightens at once. Airspace, seas, supply chains, political thresholds, economic pressure. Poland does not defeat Russia by itself. It defeats Russia by making sure Russia cannot fight alone. And that is where the real danger begins. If Russia were ever to invade Poland, the decisive phase would not be the first month or even the first week. It would be the first 72 hours. That is the window Russian doctrine depends on most. The phase where speed creates shock, shock creates hesitation, and hesitation creates leverage before alliances fully synchronize. That is also the phase Poland is built to deny. Russian planners understand they cannot fight a long, open war against NATO on equal footing. That reality has shaped their strategy for decades. Moscow relies on momentum, move fast, confuse decision-making, and establish facts on the ground before a unified response hardens. In Ukraine, Russia believed that model would work. It assumed political paralysis would slow Western reactions, that sanctions would take time, and that escalation could remain compartmentalized. Poland removes every one of those assumptions at once. From the moment a crisis involving Poland begins, NATO does not need to invent a response from scratch. It has standing consultation mechanisms, established command structures, and rehearsed reinforcement concepts that can move quickly as the situation escalates. Air policing is active. Intelligence sharing is routine. The alliance treats uncertainty not as hesitation, but as a warning signal. That difference collapses Russia's timeline immediately. Poland's defense posture reflects a simple understanding of modern war. You do not need to win instantly. You need to avoid collapsing instantly. Once the opening phase passes without failure, the conflict stops being about breakthroughs and starts being about endurance, logistics, and political resolve. That is where Russia's advantages erode. Poland has shaped its forces around exactly that problem. Not to overpower Russia everywhere, but to ensure nothing breaks early. Air defense is layered to protect critical infrastructure. Ground forces structured to absorb pressure rather than chase rapid counteroffensives. Fires designed to disrupt movement instead of gambling on decisive strikes. Logistics built for sustained operations rather than symbolic displays. This approach is not dramatic, but it is devastating to a strategy built on speed. When speed fails, Russia's escalation model backfires. Missile strikes that do not produce collapse harden resistance. Air attacks that fail to suppress defenses invite retaliation. Ground advances that stall under constant surveillance turn into exposed targets. Every day that passes strengthens NATO's position rather than Russia's. The 72-hour window is where Russia would need to dominate airspace, disrupt command networks, fracture political unity, and impose momentum. Poland is designed to make none of those objectives achievable quickly. Airspace becomes the first constraint. Poland operates inside one of the most integrated air and missile defense environments in the region, tied into wider NATO awareness and a shared air picture. National systems are tied into alliance networks. Surveillance is layered. Early warning is shared. Any attempt to overwhelm defenses becomes visible to multiple actors simultaneously. This does not mean Russia cannot strike. It means Russia cannot strike without consequences compounding immediately. Missile launches are detected. Aircraft movements are tracked. Patterns are shared in real time. The fog Russia relies on to confuse decision makers simply does not exist. And without confusion, escalation becomes a choice rather than an accident. The same logic applies on the ground. Russian forces perform best when they can exploit weak corridors and outrun coordination. Poland denies that freedom. Routes are known. Defensive depth exists. Reinforcement flows favor the defender. Every kilometer Russia advances increases exposure. Supply lines lengthen. Rear areas become vulnerable. And the battlefield grows louder, not quieter, with distance. At that point, the war stops being about what Russia can do. It becomes about what Russia cannot avoid triggering. An invasion of Poland would not remain confined to Poland. Airspace tightens across the region, naval posture shifts, reinforcement accelerates. Economic measures escalate faster because the political justification is unmistakable. Russia would not just be fighting Polish forces. It would be fighting the clock. And the clock does not favor Moscow, because in this scenario, time works in reverse. Every hour without decisive success increases Russia's exposure. Sanctions harden, military aid expands. Alliance cohesion strengthens under pressure rather than fracturing. The early phase of war is supposed to create leverage. Against Poland, it creates liabilities. And once that opening window closes, the war no longer belongs to Russia's preferred playbook. It belongs to NATO's, and NATO fights differently. On a map, Russia appears to have leverage around Poland, Kaliningrad to the west, Belarus to the east, short distances to key corridors. On paper, it looks like pressure. In reality, it is a trap. Geography only helps when it creates freedom of action. Around Poland, it does the opposite. It compresses options, exposes vulnerabilities, and turns every movement into a decision with consequences. Kaliningrad is the clearest example. Often described as a dagger pointed at NATO's eastern flank, it looks threatening from a distance. A heavily militarized outpost packed with missiles, air defenses, and naval assets. But in a real war, Kaliningrad stops being a weapon and starts being a liability. It is isolated, it is surrounded, and it cannot be reinforced easily in wartime. Any attempt to use it offensively would immediately turn it into a containment problem. Supply routes narrow, airspace becomes contested, maritime access tightens. What looks like forward presence becomes forward exposure. Russia would be forced to choose between diverting major resources to defend Kaliningrad or accepting that it will be neutralized early. Neither outcome helps an invasion of Poland. Belarus creates a similar illusion. Yes, it allows Russian forces to stage near Poland's border, but staging is not sustaining. The deeper Russian units push westward, the more exposed their logistics become. Roads, rail lines, fuel depots, and supply convoys would operate under constant surveillance and growing interdiction. Russia learned in Ukraine that long exposed supply lines do not just slow advances, they collapse them. Poland's terrain amplifies this vulnerability. It channels movement instead of opening it. It concentrates forces rather than dispersing them. And it rewards defenders who know where pressure will come from and prepare accordingly. That is where the Suwałki Gap enters the picture. Often described as NATO's most vulnerable corridor, it looks like a tempting objective. A narrow strip of land between Kaliningrad and Belarus, linking Poland to the Baltic states. Short distance, high symbolism. But the Suwałki Gap is not a shortcut. It is a trigger. Any move toward it would very likely accelerate alliance consultations, trigger rapid posture changes, and drive reinforcement decisions toward both Poland and the Baltics. Airspace fills with patrols. Surveillance intensifies. Naval posture in the Baltic hardens. And even if Russia seized ground there, holding it would be far harder than taking it. A corridor works both ways. An occupying force would sit under pressure from multiple directions, with contested supply lines and constant air and missile threat. Russia would not be creating a barrier. It would be creating a pocket. This is the pattern around Poland. Objectives that look attractive in theory become burdens in practice. Gains create obligations. Obligations slow momentum. And slow momentum destroys Russia's escalation logic. The deeper Russia pushes, the less control it has over the war's shape. Every advance expands the front. Every expansion invites more actors. And every new actor reduces Moscow's ability to dictate terms. Poland is dangerous not because it sits at NATO's edge, but because it sits at the hinge. Pressure applied here ripples outward immediately. Air operations cannot be isolated. Logistics stretch across borders. Political decisions accelerate because the threat is unmistakable. Russia does not get to fight Poland quietly. It fights the system Poland is embedded in, and systems are exactly what pressure strategies struggle to outrun. By this point, the war would already look nothing like what Russian planners prefer. Because once geography tightens and escalation spreads, the fight stops being about who can strike first, it becomes about who can sustain. And that is where Russia's problems compound fastest. If the first phase of a war is about speed, then air power is where Russia would try to force it. Missiles, airstrikes, and shock attacks are meant to paralyze decision-making before resistance hardens. Against Poland, that instinct backfires. Poland operates inside one of the most integrated air and missile defense environments in Europe. National systems are fused into NATO's wider air picture. Sensors overlap, early warning is shared, air policing is continuous. Any large-scale strike does not arrive as a surprise. It arrives as confirmation. This does not mean Russia cannot hit targets. It means Russia cannot hit them quietly. Every missile launch is detected, every aircraft movement is tracked, every pattern is observed by multiple actors at once. There is no fog to hide behind. And without fog, escalation stops being accidental and starts being deliberate. That is dangerous for Russia. Russian air and missile doctrine assumes that saturation and surprise can overwhelm defenses long enough to create political shock. But when defenses are layered and responses are coordinated, attacks become inefficient, and inefficiency is lethal to a strategy built on speed. Poland does not need to intercept everything. It only needs to raise the cost of every strike. Each missile that fails to produce collapse strengthens resistance instead. Each air attack that does not suppress defenses invites retaliation. Each escalation step increases the number of actors involved. Air power, instead of breaking momentum, begins to drain it. And once the skies fail to deliver quick leverage, Russia loses its most reliable acceleration tool. That is when the war slows down, and slow wars are not Russia's strength. Once speed fails, everything becomes about endurance. And endurance is where Russia's position deteriorates fastest. An invasion of Poland would immediately stretch Russian logistics under constant observation. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and maintenance would all have to move through routes that are known, watched, and increasingly contested. Supply lines lengthen, rear areas become vulnerable, nothing moves unnoticed. Poland, by contrast, sits on the receiving end of reinforcement flows rather than the supply burden. Support moves west to east. Infrastructure is prepared. Logistics are integrated into alliance planning. The longer the conflict lasts, the stronger Poland's position becomes. This reverses the logic Russia relies on. Russian pressure campaigns assume the target will tire first. That political will fades. That readiness becomes expensive. That attention shifts. But a NATO-backed Poland does not need to generate endurance on the fly. It already operates inside a system designed for sustained pressure. Every day without a decisive Russian breakthrough hardens that system. Sanctions deepen, military aid expands, political unity strengthens rather than fractures. What begins as a military operation turns into an economic and strategic drain that Russia cannot easily contain. And there is no clean exit. Once escalation crosses into alliance space, it cannot be reset. The longer Russia remains engaged, the more leverage it loses. Not because it is defeated outright, but because it is trapped in a conflict that grows heavier with time. This is the quiet failure mode Russia fears most. Not collapse, but entanglement. Russia is not afraid of Poland because of size or numbers or even NATO slogans. It is afraid of Poland because Poland breaks the assumptions Russia depends on to apply pressure without consequences. Russia's strategy relies on ambiguity, on moving just fast enough to create confusion but not fast enough to trigger full response, on shaping the environment before resistance hardens. Poland removes that space. There is no clean probe, no limited test, no controlled escalation. The moment pressure is applied, it becomes visible, shared, and answered. What Russia prefers to keep blurry becomes clear too quickly, and clarity is dangerous for a strategy built on delay. An invasion of Poland would not unfold the way Russian planners want wars to unfold. It would not stay regional, it would not stay manageable, and it would not stay on Russia's timetable. Every move would ripple outward, pulling in airspace, seas, logistics, politics, and economics all at once. The quiet window Moscow relies on to shape events would slam shut. That does not mean Russia would collapse overnight. It means something worse from Moscow's perspective. It would be trapped in a conflict where every day strengthens the other side, where endurance matters more than shock, and where escalation cannot be paused or rewound. Poland does not need to defeat Russia on the battlefield to win this equation. It only needs to survive long enough for the system around it to engage fully, and that system is designed to last. This is why Russia threatens Poland rhetorically, but stops short operationally. Not because the fight is impossible, but because the consequences are uncontrollable. The moment Russia crosses that line, it stops choosing the pace, the scale, and the shape of the war. Those choices shift elsewhere. So the real deterrent is not a single weapon, or a single brigade, or even a single alliance clause. It is the certainty that once pressure is applied, it cannot be contained. Poland represents that certainty, not as an aggressor, not as a superpower, but as a strategic obstacle to Russia's preferred way of fighting. And obstacles like that do not need to be dramatic. They only need to be unavoidable. That is why Russia cannot afford to invade Poland, and that is why it almost certainly will not. This video is analysis based on publicly available reporting and does not advocate violence.